Thank you, Rishi and Johnny, for your beautiful musical contributions. Welcome, University of Iowa students, faculty, staff, and administrators. Welcome, citizens of the city of Iowa City and nearby communities. Welcome, residents of the Hawkeye State. Welcome, international and distinguished guests. My name is Kirsten Kumpf-Bahle. I'm a faculty member in the Division of World Languages, Literatures, and Cultures in the Department of German. Today is a day I have been working towards and waiting for since the spring of 2020, when I received a call from the board of directors of the Anne Frank Center and learned that my proposal for the 13th Anne Frank sapling to be planted in the United States was accepted. Although I knew the competition was high, I was not deterred. As Anne said, nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. I'm convinced that this community is a perfect home for such a tree. So I went for it, and here we are. I was disappointed when I learned that our event today had to be moved indoors. I wanted the tree to hear my words and feel the positive energy radiating from all the people who supported the trees down to its tiniest buds. This shift in location, however, has been a humbling experience. It makes me reflect on how Anne may have felt all of those months cut off from the tree that she admired, and how lucky we are that we have the freedom to go out and stand under its branches following this ceremony. As I look out into the audience and stand here on this revered space, the Pentacrest, I am convinced that the tree about which Anne Frank wrote while in hiding in Amsterdam for over 2 years, trying to evade Nazi persecution during World War II, will take root in a most remarkable community. We are standing on the grounds of the first capital of the state of Iowa, which was named to the National Register of Historic Places in 1972. Iowa City is the first UNESCO City of Literature in the Western Hemisphere and home to the world-acclaimed Iowa Writers' Workshop. Anne Frank's tree will be planted in a place associated with free speech, activism, and celebration. It is here in this 4-block area, the 0 point of the street grid of Iowa City, where city and campus intersect in a most unique way. I have been joined this year by a team of people who sit at that intersection of so-called town and gown. The planting team is comprised of students, local businesses and organizations, different units of the university, faculty, and staff alike. It has been my great pleasure to work with these individuals for months toward the creation of today's event. I am indebted to my planting committee, my co-chair, Jennifer New, along with Mary Cohen, Andrew Dahl, Claire Francis, Josh Hare, Rabbi Esther Hugenholz, Heike Kumpf, Susie Reagan, Marissa Rettman, and Emma Silverman. Finally, let me draw your attention to today's date. It is not without coincidence that we are planting this tree on April 29th. Yesterday evening at sundown marked the end of Yom HaShoah, also known as Holocaust Remembrance Day, when the world commemorates the millions of Jews who died at the hands of Hitler and his followers. Furthermore, this evening marks the beginning of Shabbat, the Jewish sacred day of rest. Today we also recognize Arbor Day, a national holiday created to acknowledge the significance, vitality, and resilience of trees. Unknown to most, on April 29th, 1940, Anne Frank began her legacy in the state of Iowa as part of a pen pal exchange. It was on this day that she wrote a letter to Juanita and Betty Wagner of Danville, Iowa. This is the first and only letter that she would send. 11 days later, the German army invaded the Netherlands. Anne Frank may not have been able to develop this Iowa connection any further, but by way of our collective caring of and attentiveness to this sapling, each one of us can help grow awareness of her story. The ceremony that you will witness today is born out of commitment, diligence, hope, deep respect for, and support of community, and most importantly, a shared conviction that Anne Frank's life, along with so many other lives sadly lost during the Holocaust, need to be remembered. Let me pause now to share with you the words of Sharon Douglas, CEO of the Anne Frank Center USA, who could not be here today, but is elated that this tree is being planted. When Anne Frank lived in the hidden annex, she had a window where she could watch a beautiful horse chestnut tree outside. Anne lived on one side of the glass, while the tree lived in the free air on the other side. Years later, when that tree reached the end of its life, cuttings were taken and saplings were grown. Today, one of those saplings will be donated by the Anne Frank Center USA to be planted here in Iowa, where it will join other saplings planted in places of honor throughout the United States. May this tree flourish and connect us back to that brave young girl who once lived in Amsterdam. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you two prominent individuals. First, Dr. Barbara J. Wilson, the 22nd president of the University of Iowa. President Wilson, the last time we spoke, we were enjoying a private tour together with your husband and your daughter of the traveling exhibit, Let Me Be Myself, The Life Story of Anne Frank, in the old Capitol Museum. That was a very special evening. Your enthusiasm and support of this project mean very much to me. Secondly, I would like to introduce City Councilor Janice Weiner, who also currently serves as the president of the board of Agudas Achim Congregation in Coralville, Iowa. Janice, I really enjoyed celebrating the Seder with you at Rabbi Hugenholz's home last week. Thank you for being here and for speaking at this event. June 6th, 1944. When there's hope, there's life. It fills us with fresh courage and makes us strong again. As you witness today's event, remember the past, create hope, and be filled with courage. May Anne Frank's bright spirit inspire us all.
Wow, those were amazing words, Kirsten. And I just want to say it takes a village to plant a tree, but somebody has to lead us. And you are an amazing leader. This wouldn't have happened without you. So let's give her a round of applause. I am so delighted to see all of you here, and I'm happy you found your way to this room. I know it wasn't easy. I want to especially recognize all the students in this room. This is the last few days before final exams, so everybody's a little nervous, and there are a lot of things going on. So the fact that you took time out to be here today to witness and celebrate this moment means a lot to many of us. And I also want to say thank you to all the community members. I'm just looking out, and I know many of you aren't students. I can just tell. Sorry. And I'm so delighted you're here and you're part of this great celebration. One of the things I love about the University of Iowa and Iowa City is the community support, the integration of the university with the community. It's one of our special talents and gifts here. We talk about it all the time, but this is a visual demonstration of that. So I'm really quite honored that you're all here. I want to just point out that this tree is so appropriate. Kirsten's already mentioned that it belongs here because we are indeed a UNESCO City of Literature, but we also talk about the University of Iowa as the writing university. And of course, many of you have known the Writers' Workshop, but you may be seeing we're building a nonfiction writing building just down the Clinton Avenue, and we've got everybody I meet is writing a book or is working on poetry here. So I think we are a place that deserves this commemorative tree and deserves to honor Anne's legacy. I'm really excited about that. I don't know how many of you know this, but I'll also tell you that this is the 13th consecutive year that the University of Iowa has received a Tree Campus USA Award. And that's, yes, thank you. And you receive that award not just because you want it, but because you demonstrate that you are a university that grows and stewards trees and thinks about the environment and the importance of trees in our community. So it's so fitting that Anne's sapling is here and joining our incredible university. I think the tree also symbolizes so much more. It really, for me, is a symbol of building consensus and building community. And we talk about that a lot here at the university. We talk about diversity. We talk about how do we bring people together? How do we listen with the heart? How do we open people's minds? And how do we create cultural understanding? And I think Anne's diary has helped show the way, and now having this tree right on the Pentacrest is such an important moment for all of us, and it will go on to symbolize the importance of not only cultural understanding, but free speech and demonstration and open discussions that sometimes are challenging and sometimes difficult, but always heartfelt. And so this tree will be part of our legacy and our future going forward. I really want to say that I did visit that incredible exhibit, and I talked with Kirsten and many of her colleagues, and my husband John and I brought our oldest daughter, and then afterwards I came back to the office and I said to our office staff, we're going to shut this office down at some point, and we're going over as a group, and we're going to spend time in that exhibit so that we can think deeply about Anne, what she stood for, the legacy that she leaves with us. And it was one of our special field trips for the office, and several of them said, we can't shut the president's office. And I said, yeah, we can. We're going over to the museum, and we did it. So I invite all of you to learn as much as you can about this tree, about Anne's legacy. If you have a chance to visit that exhibit, we've brought hundreds of K through 12 children in and students in to talk about diversity today and learn from Anne's lessons going forward. I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you all for joining us. This is a great honor.
Thank you all for being here today. Thanks to the university. Thank you, President Wilson. Special thanks to Kirsten Kumpbala, as well as to all who helped bring this to fruition. To say it's an honor to have this sapling planted here on the Pentacrest, the heart of this university, in this UNESCO City of Literature, is an understatement. Literature, writing, and literacy link this university and this city. In our mind's eye, we can imagine Anne's circumscribed view out of the annex window. I've been there in Amsterdam, climbed the steep stairs. The annex itself is astoundingly cramped and small. And the view from the window of that chestnut framed by the sky would have offered a small measure of hope and peace. This sapling is a testament to survival and resiliency of Otto Frank, her father, who decided to share her diary, of Anne's words, which have brought community together the world over. And it gives us a sense of time and nature that is elastic. It is much more than the past, more than a museum set piece of World War II and the Holocaust. It is the present and the future. Her chestnut sheltered many stories, and ours will witness the writing of many more. Communities are complex. We here are such a community, city and university knitted together, different backgrounds, religions, beliefs. We enrich one another if we open ourselves to it. And we can also put each other at risk if we fail to truly see those around us. The Amsterdam community that supported Anne, her family, and the other occupants of the annex was indispensable. People who risked their lives to provide shelter and food, and in the end, one who betrayed them. Its meaning is very present today as we bear collective witness to the atrocities Russia is committing in Ukraine. Lives disrupted and ended, families displaced, some deported, their everyday changed forever. In Ukraine, they look to the sunflower that follows the sun. In Amsterdam, Anne Frank had the chestnut tree, as do we now, which will grow to spread its limbs over us. And as a literary device, the chestnut symbolizes justice, honesty, and a place where rebels meet, fitting for a university in town which prize and act on the imperative to speak out. Our sapling will eventually grow to frame the sky, the same sky Anne saw. As we and future generations nurture it, we can recall her words and strive both individually and as one community to create the world she desired. Quote, "When I look up at the sky, I somehow feel that everything will change for the better, that this cruelty too will end, that peace and tranquility will return once more." End quote. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm Andy Dahl, and I'm the campus arborist here at the University of Iowa. And the main part of my job, the part I love the most, is taking care of these trees. And we are so humbled and delighted to have been chosen as a recipient and are thrilled to have the opportunity to care for this tree. You know, this tree has a direct connection to Anne. Right here on the Pentacrest, it'll join all the other significant trees like the state champion black walnut that's right outside the steps of McBride Hall that has witnessed so much in its last 150 years. I also have the pleasure of reminding us the University of Iowa is located on the homelands of the following tribes: the Chippewa, Iowa, Kickapoo, Menominee, Miami, Missouri, Omaha, Osage, Oto, Ottawa, Ponca, Potawatomi, the Sauk and Fox, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and the Winnebago nations. The following tribal nations: the Omaha tribe of Nebraska and Iowa, the Ponca tribe of Nebraska, the Sauk and Fox of the Mississippi and Iowa, and the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska continue to thrive in the state, and we continue to acknowledge them. As an academic institution, it is our responsibility to acknowledge the sovereignty and the traditional territories of these tribal nations, and the treaties that were used to remove these tribal nations, and the histories of dispossession that have allowed for the growth of this institution since 1847. Consistent with the university's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, understanding the historical and current experiences of Native peoples will help inform the work we do collectively as a university to engage in building relationships through academic scholarship, collaborative partnerships, community service, enrollment, and retention efforts, acknowledging our past, our present, and future Native nations. So thank you. Thank you for coming out today. Happy Arbor Day.
Anne Frank writes, "I believe that if everyone asked themselves why before they did something, they'd be much better persons and also much more honest. The word why not only taught me to ask, but also to think, and thinking has never hurt anyone. On the contrary, it does us all a world of good." In my 20s, my studies took me to Northern Europe, where I had the opportunity to visit the Anne Frank House. This sparked a desire to really get to know her story and her city as an adult, and it struck a chord in me that was both academic and personal. In subsequent years, I have worked at sharing Anne's tragic but inspiring experience and her humanitarian message with my students in a course I developed called Anne Frank and Her Story, which focuses on Anne and other adolescent writers during the Holocaust. It is an honor to uphold these stories. In applying for a sapling from Anne's beloved chestnut tree to be planted here in Iowa City, I reflected on Anne's admonition to ask why. It's certainly a question I've asked myself many times in the last year. With so few saplings rooted in the US, why is one coming to Iowa? We are at a pivotal time in history, a point at which the generational gap between World War II and present day is widening considerably. I am of a generation that still has had direct contact with Holocaust survivors, that has heard the wartime stories of previous generations firsthand, but these experiences are becoming less frequent, a reality that calls for action. I've asked myself, what can I, as an educator, do to help grow more awareness of the tragedies of that period? A living monument of Anne, a sapling in Iowa City, will allow Anne Frank's story to be shared organically, to blossom and produce new fruit for future students, faculty, staff, and community members alike. Through my studies and research, I discovered that Anne Frank's tree has a unique pedagogical value. We know that Anne Frank regarded the tree as a lifeline to nature, to the seasons, to the larger world outside her window, and proved itself a source of comfort during unimaginable times. The horse chestnut sapling that we plant today is from the original tree that stood in the courtyard behind Prinsengracht 263. Anne could see its crown through an attic window in February of 1944, Anne Frank wrote, "I look up at the blue sky and the bare chestnut tree, on whose branches little raindrops shine, appearing like silver, at the seagulls and other birds as they glide on the wind. As long as this exists, and I may live to see it, this sunshine, these cloudless skies, while this lasts, I cannot be unhappy." As such, the tree itself has been recognized as a vehicle through which to better know this very famous young writer. The tree has been the focus of multiple books, of artistic expressions, and of scholarly endeavors. For many years, the old chestnut provided a living connection to a life cut short. When it succumbed to a storm in 2010, there was little debate regarding continuing its legacy and thereby extending Anne's spirit. As I embarked on this journey, I had to follow Anne Frank's advice and ask, why? Why is her narrative worth spreading when others rise and fall with the times? And as she predicts, the question why has led me to much thought and reflection. I continually come back to the universality of her perspective, the timeliness of her message, and the truth which she was not afraid to face. She herself didn't just ask, why me, but also why to it all. In an attempt to understand human nature from all of its varied angles. By growing Anne's legacy through this tree, we become the next step. The responsibility now lies on us. I thank the letter writers who supported the first offshoots of this growth. Your support of my dream and my proposal means so much to me. And I'm asking the following individuals to please stand in recognition. Mr. Aron Agi, Dr. Liz Crooks, Mr. Andrew Dahl. Dr. Russell Ganem. Rabbi Esther Hugenholz. Mr. John Kenyon. Dr. Teresa Mangum. Mr. Christopher Merrill. Dr. Downing Thomas. Dr. Jim Throgmorton. Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge this event's major donors, Blank and McCune, Iowa City UNESCO City of Literature, Midwest One Bank, University of Iowa Obermann Center for Advanced Studies, Shive Hattery Architecture and Engineering, University of Iowa Lecture Committee, and University of Iowa Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Finally, I want to recognize Jennifer New, Associate Director of the Obermann Center for Advanced Studies, to whom I am forever grateful for helping make this project a success. Jennifer's time, ingenuity, ability to keep us on task, and her admirable support and open-mindedness truly are inspirational. Thank you, Jennifer. Indeed, there are very dark sides connected with this tree that comes from Amsterdam behind the secret annex. And in no way should the root of this tree be overlooked or glossed over. But I believe that Anne Frank's sapling also has branches and leaves that will grow in the most unique ways in the years to come. This tree will outlive all of us. Let us care for and cultivate it together with annual commemorations, educational programming, literary output, and more, so that it will always serve as a reminder of Anne's story and her dedication to peace in the face of injustice. Anne Frank's tree is here to teach us, to connect us, to revitalize us, to move us to find peace and challenge us to be better versions of ourselves. This is the reason I teach Anne Frank. Every semester, I ask students to tread her pages with me. We learn lots about the past, about who Anne Frank was, but we also learn about who we want to be. Thank you. Now, allow me to introduce Miss Emma Silverman, who is a third-year MFA student in the playwriting workshop and a member of the planting team. Emma is the recipient of a Marcus Bach Fellowship, which the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences awards for completion of an MFA project or doctoral dissertation. The fellowship's goal is to foster intercultural communication and the understanding of diverse philosophies and religious perspectives. Emma.
Hello. In October, I took a research trip to Poland to visit sites of remembrance and look for what remains of Jewish legacies in the country. This trip was research for my play Stars and Stones, an odyssey about the nuances of Jewish identity in a post-Holocaust world. Stars and Stones will be performed on May 5th as part of the University of Iowa New Play Festival. Today, I have elected to read an excerpt from a moment in the play when my protagonist is blending research and personal experience to present pages about her time in Poland. She begins with the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery, wherein there is a memorial for the 1 million Jewish children murdered during the Holocaust, Anne Frank among them. I had to pay inside the gate about $2.50. To the left, near the entrance, was a memorial, a large brick wall with barbed wire at the top, the wall folding in at 3 sides. Within the center is a structure with photos of children, and a sign in Hebrew, Polish, and English that reads, "In memory of 1 million Jewish children murdered by Nazi German barbarians 1939 to 1940. Piles of stones line the memorial, rows of them. On some of the stones are written the names of countries from which travelers have come: Tanzania, Colombia, Ethiopia, which famously has a large Jewish population, Mexico, America, Canada. Outside the walls of the cemetery is the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising Memorial, which honors the brave Jewish men and women who created a rebellion that lasted months and shocked German Nazi leaders to their core. How could these starving people, stripped of their dignity, devoid of supplies, how could they, together, fight off an army? The ghetto itself, it was razed by the Nazis, and much of what we know about it now, about life inside, was found, written on toilet paper and other scraps, and buried beneath the ground. Now published in an anthology, Words to Outlive Us, eyewitness accounts from the Warsaw Ghetto, accounts of great bravery, of horror, of shifting relationships to God. These people knew they were going to die, but horrific or hopeful, self-loathing or loving, something compelled each of them to use the little they had to record their stories, to write, to tell your story believing that one day it may be heard is an act of hope. Around Warsaw, there are still markers of the bounds of the ghetto, edges and dates. You walk along a street in Warsaw and find these salient reminders baked into the fabric of the city, into the infrastructure. Banners laid in the ground in permanent metal and stone that end for crosswalks and corporate buildings, as if to show how, although time may have moved on, the history, the significance of what happened here is as important as the 1,000-year-old cobblestones in the old city. An undeniable and constant reminder that loudly lies silent across Warsaw. Jews made up 10% of the Polish population in 1939, and today make up, in the most generous estimates, 0.05%. The Jewish population in Warsaw in 1939 was 30%. For comparison, the Jewish population in my native New York City today is 12%. Today, 2.4% of the American population is Jewish, but one should not consider these numbers without asking who is included within the statistics and who is not. Of that 0.5%, of that 12%, of that 2.4%, how many would consider themselves to be Jewish? Are there others who struggled to answer the question as a yes or no on a survey? Are there people who don't think of themselves as Jewish who are included in those numbers? Are there people who do identify as Jewish who are left out? Although these statistics are important in understanding the magnitude of what was lost, of what remains, and for giving points of comparison, one must remember that they fall short of encompassing the unquantifiable, beautifully fractured nuances of Jewish identity. Nuances that have existed and persisted in the diaspora for hundreds upon hundreds of years. And in the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery, there is space for those who are so compelled to find rest together. The cemetery is in half disarray, parts of it with organized rows, memorials to heroes, gravestones old and new. Other parts are dilapidated, fallen trees and branches, broken grave markers. A forest in the middle of the city. But around me, I see people working to restore it. I see graves of people who died in the United States and were laid to rest at home in Poland. I see graves marked Holocaust survivor. I see the graves of mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers. I collect stones from the ground. In the Jewish tradition, stones are placed on graves in honor of remembrance. I learned this in the wake of my grandmother's death, at the unveiling of her tombstone, where she was laid to rest next to my grandfather decades after he passed. I remember collecting a handful of stones, walking through the rows of the cemetery and placing them on graves where there were none. Unlike flowers, stones will not wilt and die. They cannot blow away. In the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery, some graves are much loved with piles of stones, some neglected, some as recent as 2021 and some dating back to 1806, when the cemetery was first built on 33 acres of land. I think about all the people who made it far enough to be buried here, and all the people who did not survive to place stones on their graves. And I place stones, stones which, in the Jewish tradition, will let those beneath them know that they are still loved, stones to keep the demons out, stones which, in the Jewish tradition, keep the souls of those who are no longer here among us. And I place stones. In the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery, there is a memorial for all of the Jewish children who were murdered during the Holocaust. In the memorial, there is a stone for each child who was not given a chance for a proper life, a proper death, or a proper burial. And I place stones. I place stones to save from being forgotten. Thank you. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Liz Tovar, the Executive Officer and Associate Vice President of the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Let me just say thank you, Emma, and you're a hard act to follow. I'm going to tell you that right now. Before I get started, just a huge thank you to Kirsten and to the planning committee, and I'm just super excited to see what a wonderful turnout today, to see folks that I know from all across campus and our community. Even on this wonderful rainy day in Iowa City, Iowa, we still turn out, and we are very proud within the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion to be a partner for this event today. And today, we look to the past to plant a symbol representing Anne Frank's spirit and humanitarian message for the future. While the history of the sapling is embedded in the Jewish community, it represents values and is reflective of all of the students, faculty, and staff of our great institution. Our university is a melting pot of people from all walks of life and experiences. It is our mission to educate and to instill our values of inclusion to all that walk this campus. Living symbols, like the Anne Frank tree, remind us of three key values Anne taught this world: hope, unity, and resiliency. These themes represent the stories of the people of this campus. The planning committee purposefully sought out someone who embodies Anne's spirit and has roots to Iowa's history, whose art is dedicated to uplifting social justice and providing hope, someone who is dedicated to the plight of refugees and others affected by war, and who is passionate about the ways in which writing and creativity are anchors of well-being for young people, especially those living in dark circumstances. Amal Kassir is a spoken word poet who was born to a German Iowan mother, born in Iowa City, and a Syrian father. These two worlds came together to provide Amal a lived experience shaping her work. As I've learned more about Amal, I am impressed by her commitment to sowing seeds of hope and mutual care as opposed to anger and opposition. She has reason to be angry, but like Anne Frank, she has chosen a different tone. She became a youth activist in her teenage years and has spoken about the prejudice she experiences as a Muslim American, as well as the pain she knows from having lost family members to the violence of the civil war in Syria. But along the way, she traded in her protest for the microphone of a spoken word poet. It is Amal's belief that we have to build something sturdier than anger. She invites us to look toward our similarities and not our differences, saying that the tears of mothers sound the same no matter where you go. Which is what I ask of you now, to look to the similarities between Amal and Anne. The planting team asked our friends at Hansher to help identify a young artist who embodies Anne's spirit. They didn't want a copy of Anne, but someone who shares with her grit and generosity. They wanted a young person committed to the world's current refugee crisis, as the Frank family were refugees denied entry to the United States. They were seeking an artist dedicated to the power of language, as Anne identified so strongly as a writer, and to honor the legacy of why Anne remains so cherished. They wanted someone who advocates for human rights and for everyone. As we come together today, let's listen to the words of Amal and reflect on the meanings of hope, unity, and resiliency as our new symbol, the Anne Frank tree. And let us watch it take roots here at the University of Iowa. We will not leave here today without understanding a sense of her name, Amal, which means hope. It is my pleasure to bring to the stage Hope, Amal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you. What a mighty, mighty gathering we are witnessing today. My name is Amal, and my name means hope in Arabic. As you heard, my father is from Syria, and my mother is a German American. I was born by the mountains of Denver, Colorado. I am a Muslim woman here on the second to last day of Ramadan, honoring a Jewish girl, commemorating a vision of peace, standing in the city where my mother was born, in the UNESCO City of Literature. We have just planted a tree, here with an interfaith, inter-everything audience. Is Paul Engel, the founder of the Iowa Writers Workshop, who said, if you are reading poetry to each other, you are not fighting each other. If this is not poetry, I don't know what is, to be quite honest. I come to you today to tell you what I believe is the solution for keeping this tree alive, for realizing its vision inside of our hearts, considering the climate that we are in. And I'm not talking about the Iowa rain. My hope for today is that we all walk away from this gathering better than how we found it. That we hold in us a solution that will make the world around us a more peaceful one and a more merciful one. And my message today is inspired by a young woman who, from a young age, I saw myself in. A young Jewish girl who experienced something so atrocious, so obscene, but she made a decision. She made a choice to tell her story. And even though there was a brutal war outside her window, she noticed the tree that was outside of it as well. She chose not to let the war consume her. She did not let it take away her voice or her humanity. And I think given that I'm a writer, and that she is a writer, and that we are in the city of writers, we ought to acknowledge the power of the written word, in that it is a choice. The writer makes a choice about what story is going to survive. And because of this young woman, we don't have a portrait of peace in front of us. We have a mirror in front of us that we get to see ourselves in. Today's message is of hope, of courage, of humanity. And the truth is, we have not yet arrived to the vision of Anne Frank. This tree, like all of the children, have been planted in a very, very difficult world. One that is suffering from a pollution that is residing in the human heart. Xenophobia, supremacy, oppression, bomb dropping, chosen ignorance, and if not chosen, closed eyes, closed ears, and closed doors. The symbolic tree outside is a beacon of light that is calling onto us to never forget. But not just that. It's calling on us to watch something grow and to pay attention so that we can always see what's going on. The driving force behind the hatred that fueled the Holocaust, something that will always be unique. It was a choice to exclude humans from the definition of humanity. It was a decision by Nazi Germany for this profound, radical dehumanization of a people who were but human. And if there is anything that Anne Frank's diary taught me, it is how human we actually are. When you read that book, you see that even when people are in a state of war and execution and turmoil, still puberty is striking. Still there are family scuffles and young people feeling misunderstood and hopes and dreams and preferences and delights and something to look forward to, even if it was just a couple hours at a desk to read. People are people. And in the word of an albino hip-hop artist named Brother Ali, he says, "Can you tell me what language you laugh in? The human reaction is smiles and cries. What language are the tears when they're falling from your eyes?" A couple days ago, the World Headlines released an ironic piece of news. Germany, who without a doubt, as a Syrian I can attest to this, has been one of the most generous nations to refugees today. But they decided, and the word choice is very interesting, to evict Afghan refugees and to make room for the Ukrainians. Now, I'm not going to get up here and say it's that simple. I believe that we have a duty to our people, to our neighbors, to our family. And here we are, we're facing a modern-day tragedy in Europe. A violent war that resembles so closely to the planes dropping bombs like Anne Frank described in her diary. Death tolls are high. Devastation is causing this mass migration, and we see that nations are opening their doors. Corporations are calling on people to donate and join in solidarity. And this is profound. We are witnessing right now the light of mankind pouring in support of the Ukrainians. But when these generous entities suddenly, publicly, pick, evict, deciding who is worth more humanity. What kind of messaging is this? What does this say? I believe that a nation and a heart are defined by the same thing: who they let in. It is known that the Frank family was rejected from coming to the United States of America because of the policies in place and because of the closed doors. There was no place for them. I've spent a lot of time in the human heart. It's served as a bunker during some of the darkest times. And I've learned that even inside of the most beautiful, good-natured hearts, there is room for expansion, and there is room for healing. And what's happening in the world today, this strange, selective compassion that's like great on one hand, but tragic on the other, it's going to have an impact on the human psyche. It will impact our collective consciousness. I believe with my whole heart that when it comes to humanity, there is no us versus them. It is only us. It is only us, and the moment that we decide to draw this distinction is the moment that we allow doors to be built that can be closed. When we close doors on people, we are telling them that a closed door is what they deserve. When we don't see people, we are telling them that they don't deserve to be seen. When we don't listen, that they don't deserve to be heard. When we don't let them into our hearts, we are telling them that they do not belong in the human heart. And the gravity of this is not globalistic. I'm not taking this from news and headlines and hashtags. But think about the impact that this feeling unseen and unheard and unloved has even inside of the home. When a parent or a friend or a lover makes you feel that kind of way, I don't think there is anything more painful in the human experience than that. And the truth is, not everyone is an Anne Frank. Not everyone has the bravery and the courage to choose a world of compassion and hope. A lot of times we believe these things that are told to us. And may we always have guides and heroes like Anne, who did give me, a little girl who almost lost hope. May we always have them to remind us of the light. My family lost 49 members in the war in Syria. The very first girl to die in our family, the very first person to die in our family, was my 13-year-old second cousin who was sniped while she was eating breakfast with her family in the farm. Anne Frank was 13 years old when she started her diary. And there have been times in this world where the only hope that I had was my name. And I see a world telling us to give up. Don't believe that peace is an option. Don't believe that unity is an option. Spirits are being crushed under the weight of rubble all over the world. But the poet inside of me cannot choose this story. I will not accept darkness. I will drag it into the light, whatever it takes. This has been my mission. And I needed to know, having lost my family, my aunt's house got bombed, my cousin whose name was Salam, which means peace, was killed. There's too much metaphor in that. I needed to know, how could people do this to each other? How could those Nazis have pressed the button to the gas chamber? How could the police stand on the neck of the black man? How could people go into homes and rip families out of them? How are people choosing to cut down trees? To answer this question, I had to understand humanity. I had to look inside of my own heart, and I believe when we look upstream, the problem starts with a closed door and keeping people out of the human heart. When it comes to humanity, there is no us and them. There is only us. In April 2003, an amazing initiative took place across the world, across 5 continents, thousands of scientists, hundreds and hundreds of hours, $3 billion, and it was called the Human Genome Project. And this project was an attempt to dive into the human DNA and map every single gene that made us who we are. And the visionaries behind this project were saying that this is the instruction manual of mankind, that these are where the answers are to the sickness, to the cures, what we can do to protect, find the resilience within us. Well, I believe that there is a spirit that gathered us all today here in this room. I don't think we would come to a tree planting to honor the vision of a young, beautiful girl who believed in nothing but hope if we did not have some semblance of a desire to make this world a more beautiful and kinder place. And I believe that that invitation here is an invitation to help do what those scientists did. But instead of our DNA, let us map the human spirit. Let us map the human heart. Let us scuba dive inside of ourselves and find everything it is that our ancestors gave us and that we will give to our children. Let us find where the strength is and find where there is room for healing. Let us find all the closed doors and let us open them. It's not an easy journey, but Maya Angelou said, courage is the most important of the virtues because without it, you cannot do anything. There's a tree outside and it's so beautiful. If you haven't seen it, go look. I've never seen leaves like it. There's so many colors infused. I've never seen a tree like it. What will the tree inside of our chest look like today? What will we cultivate? Will we make it so that instead of someone hiding and looking over into the tree, we can invite Anne Frank to sit under it? And alongside her, we can invite the children of Guatemala, and we can invite the kids in Flint, and we can invite the kids all over the world to sit next to Anne Frank inside of our hearts. We've already heard the quote, but how could we not repeat it? Our dear Anne Frank said, in spite of everything, I still believe that people are good at heart. I simply can't build up my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion and misery and death. I see the world gradually being turned into a wilderness. I hear the ever-approaching thunder which will destroy us too. I can feel the suffering of millions, and yet, if I look up into the heavens, I think that it will all come right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. I hope you will join me today to map this human spirit in all its glory and all its ugliness,
so that we can alchemize whatever it is inside the human heart and turn it into the beautiful solution that will allow us to gather under this tree. All we have to do is choose this. And Anne Frank said it herself. How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Thank you for listening. God bless you all. Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce Rabbi Esther Hugenholz from the Agudas Achim congregation in Coralville. Not only are the rabbi and I practically neighbors, but we have a shared interest in the Dutch language and celebrate it together with our spouses and children. Rabbi Hugenholz is from Amsterdam and worshiped in the same synagogue as the Frank family did. Rabbi Esther, it is an honor to continue learning about your religion and your culture.
Thank you, Kirsten. And Amal, salam alaikum to you. And I now have someone to invite for the khutbah, which we call the Devar Torah in the synagogue. You can replace the Nevi'im, the prophets. You're the new prophet. So you would be welcome anytime, and I can guarantee it will be a lower stress performance. There is a story in the Talmud. You know I have to start like this, right? I'm a rabbi. There's a story in the Talmud. There is a story in the Talmud about a man and a tree. The Talmud, for those of you who may not know, is the Jewish people's vast repository of rabbinic writings that interpret the Torah and that offer religious teachings, moral insights, legal rulings, and folk tales, and sometimes a bit of humor as well. This man's name was Honi the circle maker. The Babylonian Talmud, in Tractate Ta'anit 23a, in case the academics among you want to look it up, recounts Honi journeying on the road, witnessing a man planting a carob tree sapling. Honi asked the man how long it would take for the tree to mature. The man answered that it would take about 70 years, to which Honi replied, "Are you certain that you will live another 70 years? And the wise planter responded, "I found carob trees in the world. As my ancestors planted those for me, so too I plant these for my children." There are several reasons why I bring this pithy story to you today. First of all, because at this poignant moment of commemoration, I want to bring you the gift of living Judaism and teach you a snippet of our vibrant, resilient tradition that has nourished Anne Frank and us through eons and continents. And I am honored to stand here as a representative of Jewish culture, community, and religious life in Iowa City, a centennial's worth of rich Jewish presence here. And I am delighted to stand here as a partner to the Jewish and non-Jewish institutions of our locality, Hillel, the university, the Jewish Studies coursework in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, our civic partners, and others. Secondly, this is a story about a tree representing continuity, vision, and hope. Our ability to see beyond ourselves. Our Jewish values exhort us to lift ourselves above the immediacy of our own limited experience, to embrace the larger perspective. Anne Frank was able to do this very thing with such magnificence. She famously described the tree from the annex, or as I would call it, the Achterhuis, a place I know so well as a citizen of Amsterdam. And my fellow Jewish Dutch woman hinged her hopes on the branches of that tree, budded her dreams in its blossoms. Anne, or Anne, I should actually call her, the wise planter, knew that this tree would stand 70 years after she was murdered by the Nazis. And in bittersweet synchronicity, the original chestnut tree outlived Anne. Today we have wise planters planting it for the next generation, placed into its soil by our Jewish youth. The tree is Anne's Eid, her witness and our witness to both the horrors and the hopes of humanity. The Jewish tradition greatly values trees. We compare our holy Torah to a tree of life. As the book of Proverbs describes, I'm going to sing it for you. Hetz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba derachia dachenoa. Hetz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba derachia dachenoam b'chol netivotea shalom. She is a tree of life to those who hold fast to her, and her ways are ways of pleasantness. All her paths are those of peace. We sing these verses in the synagogue every time we return the Torah scroll to her ark. And we sing them in our hearts as we remember Anne Frank and her timeless gifts to humanity. Anne's writings was a path of peace in our broken world, with escalating conflict, polarization, bigotry, racism, anti-LGBT sentiment, Islamophobia, and suffering. It is a message that we need to hear. Our Jewish community has been roiled by the rise of anti-Semitism in recent years. Anti-Semitic incidents ranging from the repetition of dangerous stereotypes to harassment, vandalism, and outright murder in our houses of worship and beyond. I often find myself asking what Anna's incisive commentary would be on our current moment. I believe she would have brought her moral courage. She powerfully and very Jewishly stated, "Where there is hope, there is life. It fills us with fresh courage and makes us strong again." Nefesh Mountain, a Jewish musical group, a bluegrass group. Yes, a Jewish bluegrass group. See, we are so much more interesting than you think we are. So, Nefesh Mountain, you can find them on iTunes. They wrote a beautiful song. And it's a song about Anne Frank called Peace of the Sun, peace being P-I-E-C-E. They poignantly sing, way back in 1943, she lived inside her diary, in days underneath darkest skies, a burning ember inside. She writes to grief, but not despair. Across the chasm of death and time, we uplift Anna's voice, her refusal to despair, her stubborn hope. Anne's vision bridges eternity and binds our hearts together. We gather to honor the past. We plan to be guarantors of the future. We keep her imperishable flame burning. We will continue to tell her story. As we would say in Hebrew and in Dutch, Brucha haba'a ba'ayowa. Welkom in Iowa, lieve Anne. Welcome to Iowa, dear Anne. So this part we were supposed to do outside. I put on my outside shoes. Now I'm slightly embarrassed. So I want you to visualize that we are not in this beautiful hall, beautiful and dignified though it may be, but that we are outside with the breeze and perhaps a slight drizzle on our skin, surrounded by the verdant grass and a community of older, wiser trees that are absorbing this new comrade in their midst. So that's the context I was supposed to offer a tree planting blessing. We pray that the roots of this tree will gain hold and spread deep, drawing nourishment from the fertile earth, nourishing our community, keeping alive Anne Frank's memory, and inspiring us to acts of remembrance, kindness, and justice. Amen. There are many blessings in Judaism. There is actually not a blessing for planting a tree, but there is a blessing for blessing creation. And I will recite that now in Hebrew. Baruch ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, oseh ma'aseh breshit. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who continually does the work of creation. And then the last blessing for all happy, momentous occasions and milestones that inspire us with hope and joy. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'yirianu lazman. Thank you. Hazeh. Can I get an amen? All right. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who has kept us in life and preserved us and enables us to reach this season. Thank you very much. Shalom Aleichem.
Thank you, Rabbi Esther. We have a portion of the Oakdale Community Choir here, and we really miss our incarcerated choir members. This is the Oakdale Prison Community Choir. Our last rehearsal inside the prison was March 3rd, 2020. One member of our choir, A-Rod, who's a member of the Oto Missouri tribe, shared the following reflection for us specifically for this tree planting ceremony. A-Rod said, "I can't imagine a world where growth, the propensity to rise above our circumstances, would be unattainable. Unfortunately, for most of my life, I believed I lacked all opportunities for growth. I believed who I was who I would always be. However, I've come to a point in my life where I view growth not as an unattainable achievement, but rather an inevitable characteristic of life. Even in the harshest environments or circumstances, growth remains an inevitable and divine gift." We invite you to join us singing the song I wrote titled "May My Tears Water a Sapling." We'll sing it here a few times, and then after this, we'll be going out to the tree to sing it to the tree.
No need for money in memory bank. Let me speak and frank. The secret of the annex flank Annex means to tie by binding, and etymology drawing blank. Religion comes from religare, Latin, also to tie by binding. My think tank tells me that cortex and brain means bark of tree in etymology. Kabbalah means tree of life in its ministry. We must ask ourselves why we miss letters from A to Z. Kabbalah hides Allah, unity in this holy sea. It will cost many to be hollow. Love trees of immortality. We must rethink the term crazy. Plants relate to all of us personally. Thalamus and brain in etymology means a flower. I've seen plants die and come back to life with power. From chanting Hare Krishna, I grew new prayer plants in this tower. Synagogue is pedagogue, never sour. Pet is child and gold means to protect in this hour. And frank is every child to protect. We replant this tree with human respect.
May my tears water a sapling. May my life support its growth. May I walk with care and healing for new life upon the earth. May our breath move with the Spirit, flowing free around the earth. May we listen to the sunshine and feel the moon reflect our world.
No need for money in memory bank. Let me speak, Aunt Frank, the secret of the annex flank. Annex means to tie by binding, and etymology drawing the blank. Religion comes from religare, Latin, also to tie by binding. My think tank tells me that cortex and brain means bark of tree in etymology. Kabbalah means tree of life in this ministry. We must ask ourselves why we miss letters from A to Z. Kabbalah hides Allah, unity in this holy sea. It will cost many to be hollow. Love trees of immortality. We must rethink the term crazy. Plants relate to all of us personally. Thalamus and brain in etymology means a flower. I've seen plants die and come back to life with power. From chanting Hare Krishna, I grew new prayer plants in his tower. Synagogue is pedagogue, never sour. Pet is child and gold means to protect in this hour. And frank is every child to protect. We replant this tree with human respect.
May my tears water a sapling. May my life support its growth. May I
Anne Frank is every child to protect. We replant this tree with human respect.
Thank you for sharing your voices. We invite you to join us at the tree. It's at the northeast corner of the Pentacrest, and the Shabbat service will be at Phillips Hall, directly across Clinton Street, followed by a youth writing event with them all. Thank you, and let us build that respect we heard about in our hearts and continue to grow it in every interaction we have. Thank you.